What's the absolute worst way to react when someone makes a huge, costly, or even dangerous mistake? It's probably the exact thing you feel like doing in that moment. Criticizing them, blaming them, and letting them know exactly how much they messed up. But what if I told you that this natural reaction is not only ineffective, it's actively destructive, and that the most powerful leaders in history do something completely counterintuitive? By the end of this video, you won't just understand a powerful psychological principle from what is arguably the most important self-help book ever written. You'll have a practical framework for turning potentially career-ending mistakes into moments of profound loyalty and learning. We're going to transform how you handle failure, both in others and in yourself, by dissecting one of the most powerful leadership stories you will ever hear. If you want to gather honey, don't kick over the beehive. Let's break down what that really means. Point 1. The futility of criticism. Carnegie's fundamental point is this: 99 times out of 100, a person, no matter how wrong they may be, does not see themselves as wrong. Think about it. Al Capone, one of the most ruthless gangsters in American history, saw himself as a public benefactor, saying, "I have spent the best years of my life giving people the lighter pleasures, helping them have a good time." He didn't see a villain in the mirror. Carnegie tells the story of Two Gun Crowley, a cop killer who, while cornered by police, wrote a letter. Did the letter say, "I'm a terrible person for what I've done"? No. It said, "Under my coat is a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm." This is human nature. Criticism is futile because it puts a person on the defensive. It wounds their pride, hurts their ego, and immediately makes them strive to justify themselves. You don't get learning, you get resentment. You don't get improvement, you get defensiveness. When you criticize someone, you are, in effect, kicking over their personal beehive. You might feel a moment of satisfaction as you unleash your sting, but all you'll get in return is a swarm of resentment, justification, and ill will. You get the sting, but you never get the honey. So if criticism is the wrong tool, what's the right one? To understand that, we need to look at a man who had every right to criticize, but chose a path of genius instead. Point 2. The masterclass in leadership. The Bob Hoover story. The name Bob Hoover might not be familiar to everyone, but in aviation circles, he's a legend. A World War II fighter pilot, a brilliant test pilot, and one of the most skilled stunt pilots of all time. The story goes that Hoover was set to perform at an air show in San Diego. As was custom, he performed his routine and then returned to the tarmac in his propeller-driven P-51. The next day, he was scheduled to fly home in a different plane, a jet. A young, eager mechanic serviced the P-51, filling it with fuel for its next flight. But he made a catastrophic mistake. He filled the propeller plane, which runs on gasoline, with jet fuel. Hoover got into the plane, took off, and climbed to about 300 feet. Then the inevitable happened. The engine sputtered, choked, and died. A plane with no engine is a glider. A P-51 with no engine is a rock. Through sheer, almost superhuman skill, Hoover managed to land the powerless aircraft without it bursting into a fireball, saving his own life. Imagine the walk back to the tarmac. He knew exactly what had happened. He saw the mechanic who had serviced his plane, and the young man was absolutely devastated. He was sobbing. He knew his mistake had just destroyed a priceless aircraft and nearly killed a living legend. His career, he thought, was over. He was braced for an explosion of rage. He deserved it. But the explosion never came. Bob Hoover walked over to the young man. He didn't shout. He didn't blame. He didn't even mention the mistake. He put a large fatherly arm around the mechanic's shaking shoulders and said with total sincerity, "To show you I'm sure that you'll never do this again, I want you to service my F-51 tomorrow. Quick question for you. What's the biggest mistake you've ever seen someone make at work, and how did leadership handle it? No names, of course. Let me know in the comments below. That single act in that moment of crisis is the very soul of this principle. So let's talk about why it's so powerful. Point 3. The psychology of empathy over condemnation. Why did Hoover's reaction work so much better than criticism would have? First, Hoover recognized the mechanic already knew he had failed. The young man's shame and fear were punishment enough. Adding condemnation would have been pointless. It would have been kicking a man who was already down. The first rule of handling a mistake is to assess if the person already understands the gravity of the situation. If they do, criticism is redundant. Second, Hoover's response preserved the mechanic's dignity. Instead of branding him a failure, Hoover reframed him as someone who had just learned the most powerful lesson of his life. By saying, "I'm sure you'll never do this again," he wasn't just forgiving the mistake. He was expressing confidence in the man's future. He separated the action from the person. The action was a mistake. The person was still a capable mechanic. Third, and most importantly, it created unbreakable loyalty. Can you imagine how that mechanic felt? In the worst moment of his professional life, his boss didn't crush him. He lifted him up. That mechanic would probably have walked over hot coals for Bob Hoover for the rest of his life. He would double and triple check every single task he ever did for him again. This is what modern business leaders call psychological safety. It's the idea that you can make a mistake without fear of humiliation. When a leader creates this environment, people are more likely to innovate, to be honest about problems, and to take ownership of their errors instead of hiding them. A leader who condemns creates a culture of fear. A leader who understands, like Bob Hoover, creates a culture of loyalty and excellence. The conclusion. So, let's bring it all together. 1. Condemnation is futile. As Dale Carnegie says, it's like kicking a beehive. It only ever generates defensiveness and resentment, never positive change. 2. The Bob Hoover method, the masterclass in leadership, is to replace criticism with empathy and reassurance, especially when the person is already aware of their failure. And 3, this approach works because it honors basic human psychology. It respects a person's pride, builds their confidence, and turns a moment of devastating failure into a lasting lesson in loyalty. So here is your challenge for this week. The next time someone around you makes a mistake, your colleague, your child, your partner, and your first instinct is to criticize, I want you to stop. Take a breath. Resist that urge. Instead of asking, why did you do that? Try asking, are you okay? What happened? Try to understand before you try to condemn. See how it changes the entire dynamic of the conversation. You're not letting them off the hook. You're helping them learn from the mistake in a way that actually sticks. You're choosing the honey over the sting. If you found this valuable and you want more deep dives into the principles that can truly change your professional and personal life, do me a huge favor and hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next video. Thanks for watching.